Hi everybody, Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Delegating. This is the first podcast of 2026 and my 633rd podcast. So I'm really pleased to welcome Paul Thornton, and we're going to be talking about his book, Leadership Skills Boost Your Effectiveness, but with the strapline, every leadership skill you strengthen today prepares you for tomorrow's challenges. Paul, thank you so much for coming on again to the podcast and talking about your new or your latest book.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Tim, for having me on. I greatly appreciate it and love chatting with you about leadership and other topics.
So where can people find you?
Probably the easiest place is I'm on LinkedIn. I try to publish something there, I don't know, several times a week on leadership. So my LinkedIn address is probably the best.
Excellent. So, Paul, you say that great leaders improve the status quo. What's the biggest mistake leaders make that actually locks in the status quo instead of challenging it?
Well, I think some leaders try to change too much too quickly, and they end up changing really very little. Some leaders I've found they accomplish a significant improvement and then they want to coast. They just kind of
Yeah.
go with the flow. They don't really get energized to go for that next big change that might improve things even a lot more. So those are two things that I see.
Okay. Your book is structured as a leadership toolkit.
Mhm.
If a leader could only master 3 of the 15 skills you cover, which ones would give them the biggest returns and why?
Good question. I think communications is always high
Yeah.
on the list, both sending messages and listening.
Yep.
Um, Really, communications is what leaders do, day in and day out. The clarity of their message, how precise they are, how they engage people, how well they listen, how well they, you know, make sure they understand the person they're dealing with. So I think that's a biggie, certainly.
Mhm.
Um, Time management, I think, is another very important one. These days, it's easy, very easy to get distracted and to get off your game, to get pulled into the urgent stuff. Your high priorities sometimes can slip to the back burner. So that's important. And maybe delegating,
Yes.
if you don't delegate, you don't develop your people and you don't give yourself time to focus on the most critical strategic issues that you should be dealing with. So those might be my top three.
Yeah, I met Jenny, who's coming on this podcast on Thursday of this week, and for her, she has a mission, and the only way that she's going to achieve that mission is by delegating.
Yeah.
And it's such a critical skill. I totally agree. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, you open with asking better questions. Why do you believe the best leaders aren't the ones with the answers, but the ones asking the right questions?
Well, I think the right question can penetrate a lot of the noise and a lot of the clutter and the, I don't know, minutia that's going on and help the team and the leader get to the core issue, the core problem, the core opportunity that needs to be dealt with. So questions are very good at penetrating and getting to a deeper level, I think, you know?
Yeah, I think in my experience, one of the things that we've always said to our team is that we're not the ones with all the answers.
Yeah.
I
Mm,
think there's a there's a certain amount of that's how leadership was, where the
mhm.
leader's supposed to have all the answers, and now as you move up through as you move up. The further you go, the less connected to the customer that you are.
Mm-hmm. And I think also, Tim, we just talked about delegating. Sometimes in a team meeting, you can say to the team, okay, what is the one question we need to focus on or answer to help us move forward?
Yeah.
So throw it out to the team. What do they see as the most important question that needs to be addressed to make progress, or to focus the group, I should say?
Yeah. Listening sounds obvious, yet it's consistently missing. In your experience, what really gets in the way of leaders listening properly?
That's a good question also. Today, we have so many distractions going on in our head and in the environment that we're in. So clearing your mind, clearing your environment so you can really focus on what the person is saying, I think is really important. Yeah, so distractions are huge. We all have, 28 things on our to-do list, and we're thinking about those things and not paying attention to the person we're meeting with and talking with. We can easily get distracted. So I think that's really critical.
You share, don't you, the Eisenhower matrix, which is is it
Urgent versus important,
urgent
basically.
versus important? That's
Yeah,
it. Yes.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we're flooded with emails and problems coming up, and things that are happening day in by the minute, and we can get pulled away from, as I said earlier, what's most important, our strategic big picture goals, and we can get pulled into the weeds and the details, and we don't deal with the really, really, really important stuff. We get pulled into what's urgent.
It's the firefighting, isn't it, that we
Yeah,
get pulled into?
firefighting. Good
Yeah,
way to
yeah.
describe it. Yep.
Rather than the strategy.
Yep.
And as leaders, quite often we get pulled in, as certainly as a small business, we get pulled into working in the business rather than working on the business, don't we?
Right. Exactly. Yep. Very true.
You challenge the idea that coaching is only for poor performers. How does coaching high performance differently change outcomes for both the individual and the organization?
Yeah, I think I like the idea that everybody needs a coach, whether they're, average performer or outstanding performer.
Just
Everybody,
before we went live, you talked about sports.
yeah,
Your grandchildren all playing sports. They'll all have coaches, won't they?
yep,
Yeah.
yep. I was a former hockey coach, and I also try to coach them a little bit about their hockey, the ones that play hockey. But athletes certainly realize the importance of having a coach, getting feedback, watching themselves on videotape, continuous improvement, always working on their skills. Um, so coaches need to, or everybody needs a coach, not only the poor performer, average performer, but those that are near the top also need a coach. Those coaches are going to be identifying some small little change they could make with their, I don't know, their demeanor or their body language or the way they present their idea, some minor tips, but important things that could even make them be more effective. Just like a top athlete. I think you said, Tim, you played soccer, right? In
I have
previous
played
life?
soccer, yeah.
Yeah. So even the great player could learn something by, gaining a little insight that in this situation you tend to do this, you know, and there's other options. And if you did something different, it might have a different impact, that type of thing. So yeah, everybody needs a coach. I think that's important.
Because when you do leadership training, what people always talk about is the bell curve, don't they, of the
Yep.
distribution of the people,
Mm-hmm.
and that you'll have 20% of the people will be high achievers,
Mm-hmm.
60% of the people will be average and okay,
Yep.
and 20% of the people will be low achievers.
Yep.
And the question then is always asked, who do you spend the time with to basically help them? Where do you coach?
Mm-hmm.
And that's always an open question. And most people say, what we'll do is we'll coach the bottom achievers and try and get them to the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas other people say, well, you're wasting your time. You might as well just
Mm-hmm.
help them probably move on to a different job or something like that. So where would you, in terms of the bell curve, where are you suggesting that we coach?
Well, it's an interesting question, and I think one way to look at it also is, can you take a top performer and have them coach a poor performer or a lower performing person? Um, when I was coaching hockey, I would maybe on occasion take a top performer who was really good at shooting, let's say,
Hmm.
and have him partner up with someone at the low end of the spectrum and say, work with him for 20 minutes on getting your shot off quickly, diagnosing where the goalie is, that type of thing. Going back though to your question, I would tend to, if the poor performer has a real show-stopping lack of a skill, I would spend some time with that, because everybody needs to have skills up to a certain point to be competent and get their job done. But beyond that, your point is, my point would be, don't overlook coaching the top performers, because they like feedback, they like to perform and excel, and they want to improve their game just as much as the people in the bottom 20%. So spend some time, divide it up, so to speak, a bit, and spend some time in all three sections. But there's some different ways you can get it done. As I say, use some top performers to help the low performers if possible.
Changing tack slightly, emotional intelligence runs through almost every chapter. Where's what's one small EQ habit leaders can adopt that creates a notable shift in how they're perceived?
I think they can become more aware of their hot buttons. What really gets your emotions peaked, and if you're aware of that, you can then condition yourself. Okay, I got to take a minute. Take a breath, ask a question, take a little bit of time before you respond. So self-awareness for any leader is vital, and the more aware you are, especially in those high emotional situations, you can gather yourself and you can respond more effectively than just blurting out or reacting immediately with some emotional thing you typically regret later on.
Yeah, I think that emotional intelligence, I think, is probably in the last 5, maybe 10 years, it's been one of the most important skills to have.
Yeah, I would agree. It's very important. And, having some empathy for the people you're leading is part of it. It's very important. Uh, I think it's really important to get a sense of what people are thinking and feeling. How do they feel about the change or the strategy or the program that you're implementing at the time? A lot of leaders just look at the hard data, the numbers and the, spreadsheets and all that. And they need to spend a little bit more time on what are people feeling. Feelings, motivate us, they energize us, they keep us, um, I don't know, energized and going in a certain direction. So that's important.
We've had a comment from Andrew Slesser, who's a long time watcher of ours for a number of years. Thank you, Andrew, for this. Good afternoon. You will only improve whatever you do, sports or business, when you train with people at a higher level than yourself.
Yeah, I think a coach typically has some experience and, background, insights, ideas that will help that person they're coaching improve, you know? Um, Now, if I'm I don't know much about soccer, for example. If I were coaching you, Tim, I could watch you play, and even though I don't know a lot about it, I could know what questions I could ask you to pull out of you what you think would improve your performance. Now, you know, what you come up with may or may not improve your performance, but there's a good chance that it would. So even though I may not be an expert, I'm kind of backing off on what I said initially. Even though I'm not an expert, if I know what questions to ask the person, and I can probe those and I can pull out of them something specific and concrete that will help them improve, well, maybe I can coach them even though I'm not an expert.
I think sometimes having somebody who knows nothing about it is actually a because they go, so what are you doing now? Well, like oh,
Yeah,
I never, it's because it's the unknown unknowns, isn't it? Quite often
yeah,
that is the thing that's getting you.
yeah, yeah. A fresh set of eyes sometimes can give you a thought or idea that you hadn't really considered.
Meetings are a universal frustration.
Mm.
What's the one change leaders can make to instantly improve the quality of their meetings?
Well, one thing I did is going back to the first question you had about chapter one deals with asking better questions. I redesigned my agenda items as questions. So each agenda item was a question to be discussed and resolved or answered, I should say. So that's one thing you can do. Um,
Like that?
I think, leaders use all three. I talk a lot about three styles of leading: directing, discussing, and delegating.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to use all three, or you typically use all three in every meeting. But going back to delegating, sometimes it's good to delegate a part of the meeting to one of your staff members.
Yeah.
Like Sue or Joe, I want you to run the discussion on this particular topic. I want you to own it, you lead it, you facilitate it, you reach the conclusion or the answer we need to come up with for this question. So I think that's a good technique to engage people as well.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a great way of. Uh, it also helps them build their leadership skills.
Right.
I mean, and also, what we're looking for is consensus.
Yeah.
I'm working at the moment with an organisation where we had a meeting about consensus, and then the CEO in the last 15 minutes said, "I've done a PowerPoint. Shall we just agree to do that?"
Yeah.
Influence is a recurring theme in the book. What's the difference between influence that moves people and influence that just sounds good in a slide deck?
Well, if I can influence a person, they buy into what I'm saying, the idea, the concept, the proposal. So they buy into it. They have more than just, they're committed, I should say. Um, and I need to do that by engaging their head, maybe in their heart. The logic part of it is important, but also the emotional part we talked about before.
Mm.
How do they feel about this proposal? Why do they see, or how do they see the advantages? What's in it for them? That type of thing. But you want to move the person from just complying, doing the minimum, to being committed, that they're really into it, they buy into it, they believe in the plan, they support it. They're going to do everything they can to help you and the team succeed based on the strategy or proposal that you put out there.
Just quickly, as we've got about
Yeah.
30 seconds left. First of all, Andrew's made a comment. As long as there's not a meeting about the previous meeting, And if someone finishes your book and does nothing, they've missed the point. What's the one action you'd challenge every listener to take in the next 7 days?
Buy my
Sorry to
book.
drop that on you.
Buy my book.
Yeah, read it.
Read it. But as I said, communications is probably the one thing that we all can improve on. It's a never-ending process. So come up with one thing you're going to do to try to be a better listener, and write it down, practice it for a week, get feedback from your team, see if they've noticed a difference, and move on from there.
Paul, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your new book, Leadership Skills Boost Your Effectiveness. Every leadership skill you strengthen today prepares you for tomorrow's challenges. So if I wanted to buy a copy, where can I get one from?
It's on Amazon. That's probably the easiest way to get it. Yeah, Amazon.
And where can we find more about you?
Again, I'm on LinkedIn. I post on there a couple times a week about something on leadership that's on my mind. So that's a good spot.
Excellent. Paul, thank you so much for coming on. Happy New Year to you. Thank you, Andrew, for all your comments. I really appreciate it.